One day before the Chinese and Indian military's third round of talks to resolve a border standoff, India blocked 59 Chinese applications. The Indian government says that these apps engage in activities which are prejudicial to sovereignty and integrity of India. The order not only targets apps, but handset makers like Xiaomi, who have a 30% market share in the country. How will Sino-Indian tensions mount now that a new front has opened? Is India shooting itself in the foot? Joining me for the discussion is on the line Professor Rong Ying, and Professor Rong Ying is Vice President of China Institute of International Studies, and from Beijing we have Ina Tangen, our current affairs commentator, and of course we have joining us via Skype in Singapore, Lim Tai Wei, Research Fellow at the East Asian Institute of the National University of Singapore. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point. So, a day before the third round of talks between the two militaries, the Indian government fired at these 59 Chinese apps, including popular ones such as Tik-Tok, UC Browser, and WeChat, a very popular Chinese social media platform, for engaging in activities which are prejudicial to sovereignty and integrity of India. Mr. Lim, what exactly has made India take this move, and why now?
Okay, there are different interpretations of why the timing is right now. As your program has mentioned, there has been recently conflicts in the borders between the two countries. Although this is not explicitly mentioned as a reason, there are many speculations that it is of consequence. Therefore, this is one possible reason for the timing. The other one is a much longer term perspective that the Indian economic sector and the stakeholders, they've been wanting to be able to claim back the market share for the IT applications, especially the tech giants in India. They want to reclaim market share. Companies like Raposo, which is competitive to TikTok, and also ShareChat, which is a competitor to WeChat. So they want to have a bigger market share, and that's another reason.
So one stone, two birds. Ina, what is your take? Basically, according to Mr. Lim, it seems that the Indian government is using this as an opportunity for economic protectionism.
Well, I'd be a little bit more blunt. This has everything to do with the border dispute. Right now, it's involved in a face-saving exercise on behalf of the Modi government. They're very concerned about, the backlash over this kind of border adventure that they embarked on. The deaths of these 20 soldiers is weighing heavily. He's being attacked by the Congress Party. So at this point, he needed to come out and do something strong. Frankly, in the short term, I prefer that apps die rather than actual people. But long term, this signals a real front. I mean, all of these apps were Chinese, so we can't have any doubt as to what the intention was. And also, if they were really serious about protecting the information itself, they would have taken the model that was done by the EU, where they insist on a very carefully documented trail of everything that's going where, and making sure that people have all the information about what information they're sharing.
Yeah. Professor Rong, how is this move perceived here in China? I've seen a lot of people being outraged at the level of stupidity of the policymaking process. Mr. Rong, what is your understanding of the perception here, including the companies involved, the Chinese investors, and the Chinese general public, and of course, according to people in the academy, as you are?
Oh, indeed, I think I largely share the two previous speakers' interpretation of this move, which I think for a lot of Chinese observers, academics, and users, by the way, there are many, I think, users in China about these apps, that's been very much, I think, a bad time, because the two military are working very hard to de-escalate the tension, and that move would be interpreted or regarded as, spill over or escalated to another front, possible technological or trade war conflict if China responded. And it has also been regarded, particularly for those who understand the dynamic and the nature of the economic relationship is being self-defeating. I think for me, at least 3 points stand out. First,
okay. Let's hold it for now. I think let's hold it for now. I want to really come to the impact this is going to have, let's say, not just on India, but also on China. Let's take a look at some chats. For instance, India has become a significant market for Chinese companies. For instance, Tik-Tok has surged to over 120 million active users in India thanks to the lockdown. Club Factory, which is another application, has over 100 million users, and Cam Scanner has also reached 100 million users. UC Browser, an Alibaba subsidiary, has more than 130 million users, and Xiaomi, the cell phone, boasts about 30% of the market share. So who is going to suffer more from these policies, Mr. Lim? By the way, we invited an Indian guest, but until last minute he was not able to confirm his attendance. So we don't have an Indian guest on this panel. Not that we don't want to have an Indian voice. We tried, but last minute we never got the confirmation. Mr. Lim, please go ahead.
Yeah, there are 3 schools of thought about this. The first school of thought says that the loser may actually be the consumers, because according to this school of thought, the Chinese apps have been a very big competitive pressure on Indian companies, and Indian companies are forced to innovate in order to come up with new products to compete with the Chinese. Moreover, they also say that many of the products are modeled after Chinese products and try to improve on them. So some people say that consumers may be affected because they can't get access to more competitive products. There are others who say the loser will be the Chinese companies, because the dependence on Indian market, which is a huge market. According to statistics from India, 300 million consumers are using these applications. They are independent consumers, which means they are not repeat overlapping consumers. So the market loss is supposed to be quite huge. And the third reading says that that means that it opens up local Indian tech companies, the tech giants, to more competition from even more sophisticated players coming from the US. So that will mean that the Indian companies have to increase their competitiveness in order to meet far more sophisticated rivals. But of course, this will also open avenues for collaboration.
Yeah. Well, let's assume that there are enough legitimate reasons behind this policy, and you have to say every country has to care about their national security. If the reasons are well founded, then the Indian government does have a point in trying to regulate. But is this the right way of doing things, Aina, by banning these applications on very intransparent national security ground? And banning them altogether, 59 of them, and all of them Chinese, and all of a sudden, you know, with no pre-warning or anything. Aina, is there another way of doing this?
Well, yes, but not when you're talking about the real reason for this, which is political. I mean, in terms of impact, Chinese companies invested $5 billion into the unicorns, which are the ones on the leading edge of India's tech progress. That money's dried up. It's gone. There's going to be a huge impact to the market. Also, overall, you start looking at the trade disparities between them. India is 2% of China's exports, but China is 15% of India's exports. I mean, this is shooting themselves in the foot. The number of jobs that are going to be lost because of this at a time when jobs are already disappearing. This is going to be heartbreaking for a lot of people, and I don't think this was clearly conceived in economic basis, just purely politics.
Well, netizens are asked to switch to Instagram or YouTube. Mr. Rong, if these applications are what the Indian people want it in the first place, if they're so good and popular in the first place, the Chinese applications would have never been popular in India. Basically, the government is not just regulating, but dictating what the people should do with their spare time on social media, isn't it?
Indeed, I think that's exactly the reason I think, the concern that is being raised. And if, there's no serious, competitions or I think services provided by these Chinese applicants, then I think the worry is that the concern is that Indian market would be closed, or would it be there will be no serious competition. And in the end, as I think the Anna said, that the Indian customers, Indian consumers are going to suffer. And the decision to ban these applications has already undermined, the interest of these performers, these workers that are working on these apps,
right,
and causing a lot of inconveniences
and uncertainty as well.
I've received a lot of things, and more importantly, I think it's a big issue for India as a whole. If we're talking about the loser, the real loser is those Indian politicians, including Prime Minister Modi himself, has working very hard to put the vision of so-called New India into reality by advocating, by fighting, struggling with those opponents for reform and opening up. After all, we know there are people in India who does not like India to open up, who like India to live in the so-called self-reliance way, protectionism, and that has been very bad for India given the potentiality and the need for development. So I think the decision to ban in such a way, I think raised a big question about the commitment of India to further opening up, and also raise the risk or the danger, for potential investors. I think
okay, we have to leave it there. Okay, Mr. Rong, thank you so much. We're running out of time. Many thanks to Lim Tai Wei joining us from Singapore, and Ina Tungan as well from Beijing. With that, we come to the end of this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with LX. Thanks for watching. You've got The Point.